Yeah, so
The need for speed.
The need for speed is there for sure.
It's dark matter.
I was writing up the show notes and I was thinking about recapping 2023. And we can't pass on, the rise and explosion of Flipper in 2023, right? It's everywhere. I mean, last year we saw it, but it wasn't as in the mainstream as it was this year, especially after the some of the more headline grabbing news came out regarding, for example, the Bluetooth spamming, right? That's the biggest thing. I mean, Financial Times did an article on Bluetooth spamming and the dangers of the Flipper device. Then I think England banned the Flipper as a carry-on item. This week, a particular incident that we had talked about among ourselves, but came to light with the Bluetooth spamming, is that a Twitter user, a friend of mine, Preface, was at a conference. She needed to use her pacemaker or health monitoring device, which was paired with her phone, to monitor her panic attacks, and somebody was spamming Bluetooth low energy and crashing iPhone's Bluetooth stacks. And then people came out with the woodworks and said, yeah, blood glucose levels, heart monitors, all of that. And then MG, world-renowned hacker for OMG cable and some of the other devices, jumped on the bandwagon too, in a positive way, saying, don't do this. And I've always said, like, there's a fine line between a prank and being a jackass, right? It's the same way, like, I hate cell phone jammers in public space. I mean, people bring them to conferences for fun. It's okay if you turn it on once in a while, but don't leave it on, right? We have seen cases where people use cell phone jammers on trains because they don't want people to be able to make calls. Well, some people's life might depend on it, or they might not get that call they need to take, right? So this argument about the Bluetooth spamming, I think there are three camps of thoughts. One is that Apple is to blame. Two is Flipper is to blame. And three, where I stand, is they're all kind of to blame. Like at AV Tokyo, I brought my Bluetooth low energy spammer that I made out of an ESP32. We sat around the table and I told everybody, turn your Bluetooth on, I'll show you something fun. I turned it on, popped the notification, then turned it off, right? I agree that part of the blame is on Apple, but at the same time, I also understand why Apple made that decision. I mean, convenience, right? If it's too hard for people to pair things together, nobody's going to use it.
Right.
Part of the blame is also on, I think, not maybe necessarily Flipper, but the app developments of that Bluetooth low spammer, that it only has, I think, 0 or crash. There is no like volume control where you could just showcase it, I think. I might be wrong. There's so many different apps and firmwares out there for the Flipper that, mainly maybe the mainline one does have a volume control as far as, how much. But there's probably one out there that only goes all the way until it crashes the device, right?
I was going to say, yeah, there's kind of like a spectrum there, right? Like,
Right.
sending one or two, yeah, it's annoying, it's kind of cute, whatever. But it's like it's manageable.
Right.
Causing a phone to reboot, like that's
And then people are like, well, don't use an iPhone. It's like, that's not the problem. It's just like,
yeah. I'm kind of conflicted on the issue myself because of it is kind of novel and it's fun. Remember when you could send a text message to people and then it would reboot their phones?
I
I think
mean,
it was like 2013.
we had, I think that SSID vulnerability that we showed last year that would actually crash the iPhone, that you all had to do a hard reset, is way more malicious than than a Bluetooth spam that reboots it. But at the same time, proving a point is one thing, right? And even if you wanted to prove the point by being able to crash it, that would be okay if it was in a preset environment, I think. Like,
Yeah.
when all the parties agree, yes, I want to see the iPhone crash. It's the same issue I have with the DDoS attacks. I hate undirected attacks
Right.
because, like, the Bluetooth low energy spamming is undirected. If it was directed, I would have a totally different view of this. It's like unleashing a big fart in a crowded elevator. Like,
A fart that reboots the iPhone.
yeah, I mean,
A fart that makes everybody else fart.
right. I mean, like, if it was directed, if I was to, like, put a bottle on my ass, fart into it, and go up to you and say, hey, dark matter, smell this, and it would be the same fart, I'd be totally okay with it. Right? Because I have control of the impact.
I just want to say this, I'm not fine with that. I think it's a shitty idea.
It is a shitty idea. Ara, let go of your shitty ideas.
But
Yeah, no, I think that it's definitely one of those things that yeah, we know there's an issue, and it's not funny. Like, it was funny the first time you saw it, but now here's the biggest issue that I see with it is that makes it more gray area is it's like, yeah, the accessibility of it because of the Flipper Zero, I think that makes it a bigger problem because it's like literally you go on your app, click download an app, install, and then in 2 seconds you're launching this attack. Whereas like on the previous one with the SSID injection, like, yeah, that was a big deal, but there was no quick way to do that. Like, you had to have a little bit more finesse to be able to do that other attack and some setup. And I think that, like, when the barrier to entry is so low like this, and like so many people have flippers in their hands, like, and there's just the big thing about the world and especially conferences, there's always assholes, and all it takes is one asshole to ruin it. Like, it literally could be one person that fucks the whole thing up. It's like originally with the D-authors, right? Like, D-authors, like, yeah, like a single D-author can completely ruin everyone's day. So single jammer can ruin everyone's day. Everyone within 100 meters, they could ruin their day.
Yeah.
And so, we have these scenarios, and to an extent, though, I think that this is where, like, sophisticated with wireless doing like signal analysis, SIGINT, figure out where it's coming from, being able to identify it. Things like with the Wi-Fi, remember the like you made the DOF detector, something like that. That's like, oh, the Bluetooth. Because here's the thing: the person who's doing it, if somebody came up to their face and said, "Shut that fucker down," like, they're gonna freak out and be scared. You know what I mean? Just like the DOF detector, right? It's the same thing. Like, so I think also there's a window here for makers, people, to create situations where they can detect these attacks. Because Blee is easy to detect. It's super easy to detect. It's super noisy. There's lots of things out there that can detect it. So it should be, and this is an extremely noisy attack to be able to do this. So I think that detection would be a huge thing that and stand up. People should stand up and start confronting people that are doing this, that are being a dick. So.
Yeah.
I think you touch a nerve there. I think you're doing it, if you can point out exactly who it is and go and confront them. It's like, I think we want to hide in anonymous, dude, nobody can detect me. I think that is also a lure to them. But if you know that, no, you're kind of visible on the spectrum, you go fuck yourself. I just want to touch base with saying that I think they sold over 500,000 units of flippers. That's you talked about critical mass before, and boy does that device have a critical mass.
Yeah.
Way out of the hacker league. I mean, we have 30,000 people attending DEF CON.
Yeah.
If amount of hackers is around 30,000, let's say that for on a decent global scale, we're now talking about people who has just technical interest, who has easy as barrier entries like zero. You can just, as you say, so fast. You don't have to have a technical knowledge. It's script kiddies on steroids, basically. the moral, it is nothing moral with it. I think it sucks, and if people don't do it once, yeah, fine. But it goes from one end. I think it's two-part what it goes. First is the original BLE pairing problem was detected by Salva Mendoza, and he wrote about that 2019. And now people think that the people, the dude who made the app, Flipper app, is the inventor, and he done. It's like, no, he didn't do that research. He has made something that's a little bit better. So that's one thing, and I want to state that because shout out to my friend Salva. And the next one is actually what you, El Cantore, said something before we started recording, is that it didn't stop with BLE message spamming. It continued.
Yeah. So we now also have BLE attacks against what's the official word? Fuck it, sex toys.
Butt plugs.
Butt plugs. Luca, famous for the with double HID Ninja, and Matteo Mandolini. They both published a post on the double HID Ninja blog on how they have successfully used the BLE broadcast attack vector against sexual gratification toys, and they were able to vibrate all of them remotely. And the write-up is a really good write-up. It goes into detail on the hardware setup. They probed and
Decent hardware hacking blog.
Yeah.
You really go like, oh wow, that's great fun.
Right.
Someone did some fun research here.
Right. As a hardware hacker myself, I truly enjoy the findings and the methodology that they used. I had a chance to DM Renderman because he does a lot of Internet of Dongs research, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was just looking into that." One of his takes was that because of the nature of the devices, seeing this as a public attack is less likelier than the Bluetooth against iPhones.
Is that the dude behind the butt plug IO?
I don't know if Renderman has butt plug IO or not. He
No,
runs
because that's a project that talks to all sex toys.
No, he does security research for sexual toys. That's one of his main focus.
Yeah, because they made a library that talks to a whole heap of toys.
Right.
So I think exploring what Luca just did, the next Flipper app, will be a little bit more wider targets.
Yeah. But it's also, what me and Dark Matter have been saying is that we are in a new era of wireless communication. Everything is coming online. Everything is connected. Most things are wireless communicating rather than over a wire, right?
There's so much more to see out in the airwaves, and the tools to be able to see it are extremely just extremely cheap. Like you were saying, Iceman, like this isn't the first that this research was created. This was really a recreation of other people's projects, whether it was for the sex toys or for the iPhone stuff. Like this stuff has been around for forever. You just couldn't just download an app and then press go to attack it, right? It was you had to go to the GitHub, you had to figure out how to compile it, you had to make sure you had the right microcontroller, you had to make sure you had the right antenna, make sure you had the right transceiver. And then maybe then you could get it to work, right? And so it's like now it's like you already have the hardware package that does everything, and then the software package is one click away. Yeah, it's crazy the time we're living in because you can scan it, you can see it, you can interact with it.
Even seeing it is a lot easier. I mean, I have one of the Adafruit Bluetooth low energy sniffers. I had to label it Sniffer. There's an exact same board that doesn't have the Sniffer version of the firmware, and I have both of them here. So I was like, but it plugs into Wireshark. It lets you see the packets, and I was like, when I was debugging my version of it, I was just like, oh, well, I can do this. It's a lot easier. I think this is where some of the old timers have a different ethical scale than the newer generation. But I don't think that's fair. I think the gray bears have an ethical scale because of their age and experience. When I was in my 20s, I was a lot more nefarious than I am now. Because I know the impact.
Right.
I also don't want to get arrested anymore, which is the difference, you know.
Well, I can only cross over to the RFID world, and I think it was 2018, 2019, where there was some CDs for Android and the NFC stack there. You know, it was kind of interesting. So it was very easy for me to replicate. You know, you just made an MDEF message and programmed that on a tag, and you presented it to an Android phone with a 4.4, whatever it was, this snow cone thing, name me that, and that sandwich or something like that. And that would crash the NFC stack. The only way to recover it was to reboot the phone. We never decided to, you know, even if you replicated the work to a CD and, you know, it's just a file that you can, you know, very easily upload to a Flipper today and crash old Android phones. It's not out now because it's such an old thing. But we never released that. We thought that there's no use for us to publish that because what's the purpose with it? You know, what does that teach you when I do it? Oh, great, your NFC part doesn't work anymore until you reboot it.
Well, and I think too, part of this one is I think people like to stick it to Apple whenever they can, right?
Yeah.
It's like if something comes out that they can be like, "Oh, Apple sucks. Look, here's the proof." I think that
Android
there's
is
some
better.
of that's happening. Or even like the person could be with the Flipper Zero with an Apple in their hand, but they're just like, "Look, Apple sucks." And so I think that there's some chip on the shoulder with it as well. So,
But
um,
like
but I think that like
attacking
you said,
Apple
Iceman, it's
doesn't
a good
make you
idea to
edgy.
not
You know what I
release.
mean? No.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I'm different. Yeah, but you're dressed all the fucking same.
Unique, man.
Yeah, it's life of Brian. You are all unique individuals. Yes, we are. You know, it's like I think the Flipper has its place, and definitely it has mass now. But the question is, does everything have to be a Flipper app? Because like I'm waiting for somebody to build like a dock for the Flipper that attaches like an LCD and a keyboard, and you can use your Flipper like a laptop.
Okay, so I just ran across this. Somebody kind of did the inverse. They made it so you can dock your Game Boy games and then emulate them out to your Game Boy. So
Well,
I mean, they're getting close. They're getting
but
pretty damn close.
there's that now Flipper add-on that lets you play old Game Boy cartridges.
I think it's they crossed the border over to practicality, and there are so many user cases now. So with users, so their creative mind is blowing off.
Yeah,
So
but it's the same thing with the
I said
Raspberry
last
Pi. When the
year, I
Raspberry
called Flipper
Pi
used
came
that.
out, everybody was building everything on a Raspberry Pi, and Make Magazine published an article. Not all projects have to be a Raspberry Pi project, right?
Yeah, but right now Flipper is the new black. You know,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And I said that last year as well because it's just going to increase, and we're not seeing the end of it. I think it's going to be an avalanche of things.
I think they've tied into a couple of different things though to be so successful. One is it's a complete like finished package. You buy it and you click it and you open it up from stock and you can do shit with it, right? So like that's helpful. B, it's built into a case that's hardened that you can put on your keychain. So like component wise, it was thought out really well. And then the next thing is the customization of it basically gives you the entire power of a Raspberry Pi Zero, right? So you've basically got all that power sitting there. So those three things really, because we saw a very similar thing with the Pwnagotchi when it first came out. Everybody wanted the Pwnagotchi. It didn't get as critical mass because it wasn't a general purpose as this, right? But however, it had the cutesy, it had the integrated app, it did a thing, and then it was gamified. And so I think that tapping into those things just really catches these projects on fire. And then it takes people to adopt it too. If nobody built apps and built stuff for it, I think too the false scarcity that happened with their million units or whatever that got held in customs for like a month or for like 6 months. I think that helped too because that gave them a lot of traction for a lot of people that wanted them. And it drove the price up to, I saw some on eBay that sold for $1,000 a unit.
Yeah.
So I think that false scarcity made everybody be like, I have to get a Flipper. So when it came down to $200, it's like, oh shit, these are cheap. I'll pay $200. And so even people that wouldn't normally spend $200 on a little electronic thing that they're not sure of are getting into it now. So I think that this really had a mix of a lot of different things that really just blew it up to where it is now.
Yeah. When you say with Pwnagotchi there, it's the gamification. That was, if you look at the original Kickstarter for Flipper, that's one of the cause, that's one of the leading thing, to tap into the gamification. He really did. I remember reading the Kickstarter, and I talked to Pavel before about things. I remember saying to him that, I have no need for what you have, but reading it triggers my buy impulse.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you're good, because my buy impulse is very controlled. And I can imagine, how that taps into everybody's just impulse to have it, like the 60,000 units that was stuck, and it's been banned on Amazon, banned in Brazil, banned
Right.
in London. All of that just builds up to hacker mythos that people love, and it is easy to use. You don't need to know very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so like, because I've got like Mike Glossman's yardstick one. Yeah, so I've got like a yardstick one. So it's like the flipper does basically the same thing that one can do. It's more general purpose, and you can hook up external antennas and do some more things. But it's like I've already got all these like redundant tools that the flipper is, but it's like, oh, it's just so small and easy, and I can put it in my pocket. I don't have to hook it up to a laptop. I don't have to hook it up to a thing. It's self-sufficient, right?
Yeah.
So I think that also is another thing that's helpful, is that it's a standalone device that is easy to interact with, easy to trigger. So
No, like when I first got mine, I was really surprised by the build quality, because I've seen some other Kickstarter projects that were similar in nature, and their production quality was just shit. Whereas the Flipper Zero actually came out, and I was really impressed by the production quality. And I had a chance to talk to the team this year, and I told them that look, congratulations on success. I mean, I think it's a fun project, but at the same time, I think they need to step up their marketing team to put out the messages out there. We're a tool. Use it with thinking about it first.
I think it's going to be flippers, going to be more headlines for next year, for 2024. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think kudos and congratulations to the Flipper team making an awesome product, and well-deserved success.
But I think
repeat it.
I lost the link, but somebody sent me another device that looks like another terminal hacker game. Yeah, I was just like, all right, whatever.
They actually took the Kickstarter text, just pasted it over so you can see Flipper mentions it.
It's like there's gonna be a slew of them coming out.
Well, and then I was thinking too, like, how long until we get like a flipper clone that works basically as well but costs $50?
I was talking to the Flipper team about that, and they said because of their unique design decisions that they've made, still unlikely for the next couple months or a year. We've seen what happened to the Proxmark. I mean, there are more clones out there than the real one. Same for the Hackar Portapack. There's like, there's a shit ton of Portapacks out there that are not the original, and they all kind of work and don't work.
DNA.
Yeah,
work and not work, but there's a cheap copy is going to come there, and eventually somebody
at the end of the day, if there's a market, then there's a market to make a cheap alternative to it that does most everything that it can do. And I'm not sure how the firmware is loaded on these, but I'm sure has got to figure out a way to side load onto a separate device.
Yeah, I mean, the firmware is you can download, so you can technically, that's how everybody builds their own version of the firmware, right? There's a gazillion different firmware versions out there.
Yeah, so the firmware, if you looked into the development of it, is kind of stable and so good, well written.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be too hard for people to port over to other devices or styles of devices. Yeah. And then it's connection with the ports, but if you're a good hardware guy and a person, that wouldn't be an issue either. So it's bound to happen because of a huge success. Everything that's a huge success will get copies of it. That's cheaper.
Well, and I just came up across, it looks like all of the schematics and bill of materials are fully available on their website. So just needs to take someone to put it into a board design. I envision in the next year we'll have a badge that's a Flipper Zero, just like we've had a badge that's been a J-Tagulator. We've had a badge that's been a Bus Pirate. We've had badges that have had all sorts of other existing tools built into them that are conference badges, and people just put them on a different layout.
was a conference badge with Proxmox free apparently at CCC in the beginning of 2000s. So that was awesome. I want
Oh
one.
wow.
So if someone of our viewers has one, I really want one.
That's incredible. And I
Yeah.
know he will do anything to achieve that.
So, Iceman, looking back on the Proxmark world, what was 2023 like?
Well, it's been a little bit in the shadow of the Flipper because everything that Proxmark can do has been ported over to Flipper more or less for the low frequency. It's in the Proxmark world was really we're suffering from no more contributions, so the users is less in that sense. We tend to see in the community there that we're going to see the Flipper as a stepping stone, so people are going to use that one, be curious enough to know more when they hit on the limitations, and then they come over to the RFID hacking world. So that's how we see it. We don't see it as computers or anything like that, but the entry of knowledge is very low, so there's very many newbies coming out thinking that we can clone MasterCards and stuff like that. But regardless of that, one of the most important things that happened was in Proxmox 2003. We had just 2 releases this year with the firmware coming up with updates with modern things, and it was I don't want to out him, but it's a Chinese contributor that made he has improved the communication ways where we can talk with Proxmox. Yes, for the fun of it, we've been able to use TCP packages to communicate with the device and or communicate with the client. So you have a client connected to the device, and then you have, you can sit in Tokyo and connect to my Proxmox over TCP. So we made a fun that, maybe we can do it faster. So I added support for UDP, and he took that to the next level and, and made that faster. So it's connected with UDP now is much more faster. We only get 1 megabytes of transfer speeds now. It's like bazongas, and we use that in Termux and Android. When you connect with Bluetooth over with Termux and Android, so you connect with TCP bridges, but now you can also do a UDP bridge. However, doing all that stuff, he had an end goal, and that was to be able to do live sniffing. And real-time sniffing on Proxmark is just not doable because, that was we have 64 kilobytes of RAM. That's it. And we eat about 20 about that one. So we have about 40K available to collect data and then transfer them over USB packages or command packages to the client. So he just came up, since we speeded up the UDP packages that fast, he made a custom implementation for transport layer between the Proxmark and the client, sending 64 bytes packages, much smaller. But he made that in a read buffer. So now that's up there. It's almost real-time sniffing, and you can make packages that's like 300K, 1 megabyte large, like a normal, signal. It blew my mind because that was someone taking something that I thought was stale, and it's like, we solved it. Wow. What?
I mean, given the fact that there'll be more contactless communication, do you think that RFID NFC will see a bump in up to this point? It seemed very limited in the sense that it was access cards mainly, and now it's in clothing tags, it's in other stickers.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
The RFID tags are everywhere, and you will notice on your phones that Apple and they're working really, really hard by adding the physical credentials, the credential data onto the phone, so you're going to be able to access door controllers in that sense. So you don't need tags anymore or custom BLE app or like that.
Or in your hand.
Or in your hand. Like we're all cyborgs, and not even for a car, if open your Tesla or those entries, it's going to work more like that. So Apple and Android or Google is going into that direction because they know everything is wireless, or it's really going to be more wireless, and they really want to put everything in the phones. It's been research into it and more about the value-added services protocol that Apple is doing. The payments and all the membership. So it's ads. It's very interesting in that sense. So the world of RFID and wireless, it's for 2024. It's going to be more of those things. It's not going to see a stop of it.